and was subjected to more poverty than I was, because 30 years later conditions had improved and my parents were both employed and I was living better, but I still wanted a better world for myself.
Yeah, so let's shift the conversation over to Mr. Park. So did you know him?
I knew him personally. We were very, very good friends, and I put in the preface of the book, the universe sort of aligned the stars, the chances of our meeting. Again, as I said, there was 30 years difference between his age and my age, but I went to his home to do a project, an interior design project, and in the process of doing the project, we became friends and stayed friends after the project was over. So I was very, very personally associated with him during those years.
And he seemed to be a very successful entrepreneur, and sometimes even money will be a divide, but he didn't allow that, it seemed, from your book.
No, he had an idea, he had a vision, he had determination, and he took that idea and he persisted in working with it. But in the process of being an African-American man trying to start a business during the 1950s and 60s, it was the peak of the civil rights movement in the United States. I mean, this was shortly before Rosa Parks had the issue in Alabama of sitting on the bus. And so the country was having a lot of difficulty at that time, and for this man to navigate the free enterprise system of America and move from a level of poverty from his birth to being one of the wealthiest African-American men in America it's extraordinary. I mean, it's genius.
He on the cover, gosh, I don't want to say something awkward, but he does not look African American. And
well, it's not awkward. You're absolutely right, and I'm so glad you said that, because many of the readers, since the book has been out, have asked me when I'm at book shows and trade shows if he is actually African American. He is African American, and on his mother's side of the family, there was Cherokee Indian, which gave him the hair that he had. But during that era, and I had the same experience too, photographers flashed a white light in people of color's face in order to give them a brighter look. Actually, Henry was far more brown, but he was a fair-complected man. He wasn't dark, but he was a browner person. But the lighting, if you look at the picture closely, you can see how the light shines in the center of his face. And that happened to me in my high school yearbook because I was, and they didn't want me to stick out. They didn't want me to stick out as an ink spot in this ocean of.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah,
what you had to go through. I'm looking at the pictures in the back of the book, but I'm wondering if his looks though did help play a role. He's a good-looking. You're a good-looking guy too, by the way. I'm looking at your picture.
Oh, thank you.
I mean, I think,
Robin, you need to agree.
I do. I concur, sir. I would date you.
Robin needs to agree. Okay, now, when you're talking about people being discriminated against, obviously, we all know the normal discriminations, and I guess good looks is something that is discriminated, not discriminated, but what's the opposite of discriminated?
Embraced.
Embraced, yes. Bad looks are discriminated against.
Right.
Trust me, I know.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure you don't, but anyway. But yeah, well, actually, his fate. One of the things that he learned in the process. I mean, Henry was born in Atlanta, Georgia. His father moved the family to Dayton, Ohio, which was the first state above the Mason-Dixon line. The pictures in the book. He did marry a very fair-complected woman, and he had very fair-complected children. And complexion during that time, and probably still today, plays a role in a person's placement.
I think so.
Pecking order of their respectability in this country. But he learned not to put his face on his product. He marketed the product himself. So a number of people did not recognize him as being an African-American man, but initially, when he was trying to market his product to white retailers, they said that they didn't want any of his end sausage in their store and that he should cater to the black community. But in business, your goal is to make a profit. And so he wanted the wider community. So he hired other salesmen to go out and market the product versus his face. And because he was still considered a man of color. And so his face could have been a bigger advantage, but it was still not an advantage in the white community because of his color, not because of his looks.
And did he come up with the slogan, or did someone come up with that for him?
No, Henry believed in operating his business to hire the experts and the people who had the talent to get done what he needed to get done. And in the case of advertising, he hired a company called Leon Schaefer Golnick, which was an advertising company here in Baltimore. And the advertising jingle was Moore Park Sausage's mom.
Yes.
And what Henry's goal was to advertise to children. He wasn't really advertising to the adult who would be paying for the product. And it was because of women consumer groups at that time who complained about their children coming to the breakfast table saying Moore Park Sausage's mom, that they demanded that he put the word please at the end of it. So it was Moore Park Sausage's mom, and then the please was added 2 years later because of consumer groups wanting their children to say please when they were asking their mother for this sausage. So, I mean, it was brilliant advertising. It was brilliant, almost genius marketing, that this man was able to conceptualize marketing to children, because
I love that. I love that.
Yeah, because parents want their children to eat, and his original plan was to market this food to people of color who ate more heartily in the South. But there was a refrigeration plant that he had packed and stocked in a Southern Carolina state that was burned down to the ground. So rather than being defeated by that, he took the product north, and he started from Baltimore and Washington, and he went to New York, Philadelphia, New Jersey, and all the way up to Boston to market this product. And his goal before he died was to go west, but his original intent was to market the product in the South, because Southerners ate more hearty. They were doing more laborious work, and wealthy people were always managing their weight, so they didn't eat it.
There you go.
Yeah, I love biographies for the very reason of the things you're telling us. I mean, there's so many intricacies to a person's life. Hold on, I think I found the jingle. Let me see if I got it. Come on, where is it? Am I doing it right? Am I doing the right thing?
Moore Park Sausages, Mom. More pork sausages, please.
Oh, please.
P-A-R-K.
Right.
There it is. There's the please.
So did you hear the first part was Moore Park Sausage's mom?
Right.
And then a couple of years later, the women consumer group said, tell him to say please. Tell this child to say please. Now, this child was not an actor child. He actually was one of the children from a Baltimore radio and television station, and the radio announcers, such as yourself, Larry, would have their child get on the air.
Sure. Yeah.
So he was marketing to children. I mean, I just think that's brilliant. I just think that's a marvelous thing.
Did he play a role in that, in the selection of that child?
Oh, no, he didn't select the child. I think the radio host, says, well, I got a kid, let's just, and his voice is cute, let's get him to do it,
Mm-hmm. Now, how did he manage to parlay this into being a civil rights activist? Was he that before he was super successful?
Well, Robin, that's an excellent question, too. But, during that time, and really in 2017, too, for that matter, when you're African-American, you wake up with the feeling of being black every day. But just take yourself back to 1951. In order for him to market this product, he had to go through racial separation, racial prejudice, racial segregation, and not being included in the American market. So he discovered through his voice that he needed to speak up and become an advocate in order to do his job, just to do what his dream was, which was to have a better life, to earn more money, to take care of his mother and father and 2 sisters, as well as his wife and 2 children.
Gosh.
So the burden of trying to go to work every day, his color interfered every single day. And as a result of that, he had to become an advocate and a spokesperson. But in addition to that, at a very young age, because housing was segregated at that time, he did join the YMCA. He joined the Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity, which was the first African-American men's fraternity at the college level. And he joined the Urban League and the NAACP at a very early age. So his voice became heard, and he explained to civil rights leaders the plight that he was having as a businessman. So the race... Go ahead.
I was just curious how you connected with him, and how did you do the research for the book?
Well, actually, Larry and Robin, Henry and I started working on this project together. He and I were, at that point, we were friends in his life. I was starting a career. He was sunsetting his career. Mm-hmm. And so he mentored me in a number of ways when I was having my young adult insecurities, as some young people do. I certainly had mine. And he mentored me through a number of those. But in the process, he was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, which he subsequently died from. And he said to me, I need 15 more years, because there was so much more he wanted to do with to expand his business. But I promised him, as a young man, not being a journalism major, not being an English major, that I would write this book for him. I would celebrate his life for him, but nice. I was too young to know what I was biting off of. Right. So he gave me all of his materials. I have all of the original documents, and one compliment that I give to my own book is that it's very well documented, because I have all of his original plaques and awards and certificates and letters and advertisements, and if you look in the appendices of the book, you can see that I've donated a lot to the Baltimore museums, but I still have a large collection of his materials.
Would his children agree that he was a businessman first?
Well, the title "Businessman First" came. Well, to answer your question, yes, and Henry was very giving to both. He had 2 daughters, Grace and Cheryl, and they both benefited and lived very well as a result of his business success. But the title of the book I came up with that title as a result of his being elected for 2 consecutive terms to the Baltimore City Council. His visibility and his success in the black community was so great that this district voted him to be city council. Mm-hmm. And when I interviewed him personally and asked him, would he like to be the mayor or, governor of the state, or the first black governor of the state or the first black mayor of the state, he said, "No, man, I'm a businessman first." So that's where the title came from.
Well, that's awesome. So going back to your own experience, and I'm guessing that this will also apply to some of his experience, when you're the only black kid in an all-white class, do you learn more about what it's like to live as a white person, or did it work? Because I would think that what was being attempted was to let the white kids know, that the black kids are not that different than them. But I don't know why they would trickle you in, one person per class. That sounds kind of weird. But did it work? I guess that's the question. Did it work? Did it do what it was supposed to do?
Well, eventually it did. The schools are fully integrated. I mean, a couple of years later, the schools were fully integrated, but it was a resistance. I mean, there are certain counties and communities within America, even today, that still resist integration at a variety of different levels, whether it's with women or whether it's sexual orientation or whether it's race. It doesn't matter. Some people are very resistant to the intermingling and the commingling of different groups coming together. To answer your question, I was supposed to come, like you say, and show the white community and the white students that I was equal to them.
Yeah.
But for me, it was like going to private school because the resources were different. The materials at the historically black school did not even begin to compare to the resources for teaching and learning that took place in this white school. So the advantage was really was mine. I mean, just from the science classes, the language classes, the typing classes, and business classes, the white school had more. So I gained more.
Yeah.
And then as a result, rather than being tracked to a historically black school, which is what happened in American history. Black kids were tracked to go to historically black schools. I was tracked to go to a historically white school,
Gotcha.
the University of Maryland at College Park. So that opened up the lens of my world bigger. So I think I gained more in knowledge and education. I mean, my race didn't change, and it was nothing I could do about that, but I gained the most.
But I would think that the unequal amounts of money invested into the schools based on race is a government decision, and that's something that a government official could change. Did Mr. Parks, did he look at it that way? I mean, did he look at his opportunity to serve in an elected position, a way to perhaps level the playing field?
Well, he did, and he actively did that, but his primary interest was business. I mean, he had this goal as a child, and he enjoyed the art of selling, marketing, advertising. He just like any student majors in medicine or law or radio and television, his interest was business. And so he stuck to what he was doing, but he used his voice to speak out against all of the other atrocities. I mean, and some of the good things that he did, I mean, that was cutting edge before it became fashionable. I mean, Henry had women working in executive level positions and sales positions in his company before corporations were even bringing women in.
Wow.
And Henry also hired white as well as black. He also bought prison inmates, a couple of them, who were participating in state experimental programs to give them an opportunity to have a job. So he was a very inclusive person in his thinking. He was very broad and inclusive of everybody. He did not replicate the model that he grew up in.
It's amazing how lives' paths cross. I noticed in the book that Malcolm X dated his sister.
Yes, that's correct.
Wow.
And I believe that he was elected out of respect, not out of tokenism, because everybody loved him, and he was just a fabulous personality and got along with everybody.
He got along with and he did not have that negativity in his spirit. And see, racism or feminine oppression or sexual orientation oppressive or physical handicap oppression can make you very negative. It can make you defensive. It can make you argumentative. He always stayed above. He never bought into the negativity of his situation. He just figured that there was more than one way to get done what he wanted to get done, and he did it. I mean, man.
I'm just in the mood for breakfast all of a sudden. I keep thinking about sausages.
Well, I'm so glad you wrote this book because it's wonderful.
Yeah, it's a wonderfully written book. Maurice, you've fulfilled a promise to a man who obviously you admire, and you've helped us understand why we should all be admiring him. Thank you for being on the air with us. I've got a copy of Businessman First. If you would like it as a listener, call me. The rest of us have to go buy it. I do have the picture of it on the podcast that we're doing right now. Do you have a website you want to send us to?
Yes, it's www.mauricewdorsey.com or Amazon.com, or you can just Google my name in your Google browser or the title of the book, and it'll pop up, and you can buy it directly online from my publisher, Ex Libris, or from Amazon.com, or you can write me, and I'll send you a copy autographed.
Nice. And you've got a 5-star rating on Amazon. I'm at the page right now. Thank you for being on the air with us. Wonderful interview, and thank you for taking the time to talk to us today.
Thank you, Larry and Robin. I enjoyed it immeasurably.
Thank you. We will be right back.
Today in Florida Ag News from the Southeast Ag Net. Well, former State Representative Baxter Troutman entered the race for State Agriculture Commissioner this week. According to a story from the News Service of Florida, in a statement, Troutman said, "For 2 decades, I've been building a business and continuing my work in Florida agriculture, and real experience and success in the private sector is what we need now more than ever." Troutman of Winter Haven said he would emphasize keeping taxes low and growing the state's economy. He, of course, served 4 terms in the Florida House until his term limits forced him out back in 2010. But he also enters a crowded field of candidates seeking to replace Ag Commissioner Adam Putnam, who, of course, is running for governor next year. Troutman joins a Republican primary campaign that already includes Senator Denise Grimsley of Sebring, State Representative Matt Caldwell of North Fort Myers, and Paul Paulson, an Orlando businessman. Michael Christine, a